So let's take a look at the kind of questions you'll get after the multiple choice questions in section A. These are questions that ask you to describe a job role, giving examples of what that job role would do. So somebody that takes 20% of the money of a performer is clearly somebody that's going to be managing them. That was the key clue there. Working with recording companies on behalf of the performer, in other words, selling the performer, and arranging tours. So this is definitely an artist's manager. Would you be able to write a good reason why somebody would join the musicians' union? Now you need to say more than for protection. So there are two main reasons to join the musicians' union here. One is for legal protection. You ought to be protected by law against anybody that might, not want to pay you or not pay you the right amount when you've earned that money. The second is for contractual support, getting the right contract for what you're performing at a certain venue for a certain length of time. So, legal protection, contractual support. Do you know enough about your licenses to be able to answer this question? So the PRS, or Performing Rights Society, as its full name indicates, is the organisation responsible for collecting money each time a piece of music is played on TV. In this particular question, the answer is musical director. Now, you may think of a musical director as a conductor, and that's also correct, but in terms of the music industry in this particular question, which is asking us for the role responsible for ensuring that music is available and in the correct format for the session musicians at a recording session, and that would be the musical director, the person in charge of setting it all out and making sure everything's ready for the performers when they arrive. So, would you feel confident enough to give two characteristics of freelance employment? What is it like to be a freelance musician? A freelance musician, or any other freelance artist, is likely to be employed on a short-term contract. Freelance musicians are hired to complete specific tasks or job roles. The example given here is a classical violinist, who might be hired to perform at the last night of the proms at the Royal Albert Hall. Their contract might only just be for one night. Take a look at the book underneath. It's also worth mentioning that freelancers work for a variety of different people, so they're not just stuck in one job working at the same place every single day. Their job would be very varied. If you're an artist and you've managed to get yourself onto a tour, it's a really, really good thing, but can you specifically tell us why this is? Doing a sound check is crucial for any studio recording or big public performance. Here are the reasons. We need to make sure that all the microphones and lines are working correctly. Can't have any crackling. Second, we need to check the sound levels of the instruments to make sure that everything is balanced correctly. It would be awful if we could only hear the drums in a rock band. Thirdly, we need to make sure that instrumentalists and singers can hear themselves on stage. This also applies to a studio recording as well. Okay, let's take a look at section B. We'll take an example case study. This particular case study looks at how to promote. In section B and possibly section C, you're going to be given a brief. You need to read that brief very, very carefully before you even think about answering the questions that follow. Good advice would be to underline keywords or phrases in the brief that you think will become relevant later on in the questions. Okay, so one of the questions you may be asked to complete is to match up venues to descriptions. So in other words, drawing an arrow between, in this case, venue A, B, C and C to the options on the right hand side. Let's look at venue A. It says it plays host to productions such as plays and musicals. Those are key words, plays and musicals, as well as small to medium sized gigs. Well, when you look at the venues on the right hand side, I would be inclined to have a good idea what the answer would be, and the clue would be plays and musicals. Where would a play or a musical take place? Well, there you go. Pretty obvious really, wasn't it? The answer was theatre. Now let's take a look at venue B. It says venue B plays host to large touring productions, including those linked to live talent shows. So it's got to be quite a big venue. Venue B also hosts sports events such as basketball and ice hockey. Okay, well, when you look at the venues on the right hand side, it could be a couple of answers, but the key clue here is that it says that venue B hosts live talent shows as well as basketball and ice hockey. So you might not want to choose just sports centre because you saw the words basketball and ice hockey. So what else could it be? So did you figure out it was arena? That was the only other answer it probably could have been. A sports centre wouldn't host, or isn't likely to host, a live talent show. Let's look at venue C. Venue C holds regular music evenings, including traditional music and jazz, in its large function rooms. So where would you find a function room? It is also famous in the area for having a fine selection of cask ales. Alright, well, I think the last line kind of gives it away as to what venue on the right hand side this one's going to be. It is incredibly likely that you're going to get a question or a couple of questions on health and safety in the exam, because it is fundamentally one of the most important things to check off on your to-do list if you're setting up a music event of any kind, be it small, medium or large. So do your homework, do your revision on the health and safety side of things. So, can you work out from these pictorial clues what health and safety measures you need to put in place? Okay, so it says in the question, TTP is keen to ensure the venues they use have appropriate health and safety procedures in place. Explain one measure in which a venue can ensure audience safety. Okay, top left hand corner is of course door staff, security staff on the doors, very important. The next picture along is of course that fire exit sign we often see at the top of doors. You really need good signage. The third picture, public service announcement, really that's just an icon to remind you that you could use public announcements to give clear information to your audience. Think about when you go to a concert and that tannoy, that speaker system tells you that you need to go back to your seat for the second half. That's very, very useful for keeping your audience in the right place. The fourth picture along are stewards to make sure that audience members are behaving appropriately and in the right place during the concert. And the fifth picture is just to remind you to make sure that no audience members should really have to worry about tripping over any wires, so you have to make sure that your wires are well covered.